technology, what are the boundaries, how things work. And we realized that we didn't need a developer, or with the developer, it was actually getting slower and we are getting further away from the technology itself. So we got our hands dirty. And as a non-coder, it was very difficult in the beginning. It took a couple of months to see like a glimmer of result. And we wouldn't have done this without each other, right? So we literally used to hang out 3 days a week, meet in person, other days like remotely, and we are probably 40 kilometers away. And we used to do these jobs and get few products up. And after about 6 months now, we have like 4 or 5 products, and that's too because we wanted to focus on GTM. So we stopped building products. The whole development process became much easier. Now, the reason why we actually started this is because I mean, I'm sure there are people like us who are out there trying to see, who have the interest and motivation, but they don't have. They just need a Kindle to get started. So the idea is to kind of do that. So with that as a context, so today we'll one of the places where we got started is taking up an existing project in GitHub and try to run it locally. So that itself is a big win, because after that they can help you. But with that, it was like a big task, and it was super frustrating because we didn't understand any of those terminologies. So we thought that's a good place for us to start. How do you take an existing repo which is there available, where people say, hey, this is open source, this is free, this is that. How do I run it on my laptop and see results before I even get to changes, etc.? So that's the part we're going to focus. One caveat is that we are not engineers. It means I'm sure this is not the most optimal way to do it, but this is something that works and works pretty fast. Okay. All right. So feel free to stop and ask any questions, but I'll jump into this session. Cool. I'm gonna. So for today's session, so what we have done is, give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is this is a project that is on GitHub. Okay, it's called Awesome LLM Apps. This amazing guy, what he has actually done is he has created a bunch of different agents, simple agents, which you can easily use and like try out, get started with whatever projects you want to build. Okay, so if you see, like, there is a 3 pie game, there is a lead generation agent, there is a legal agent, there is a reasoning agent, there is a service agency. There are like a lot of different agencies actually built out. Okay, and obviously we've not tested all of these, but we have explored some interesting stuff. Seems like a reasonable place for us to start. Okay, now today what we are going to do is, there is a interesting agent called travel agent. Okay, so if we go here, if you see the readme, it basically says that if you give a particular destination, it customizes your itinerary, and it based on the number of days you want to travel, and it's going to give you. I'm sure it's not the most efficient thing that actually does it, but it's a very simple travel agent for you to get started. So once you have this, then you can see, how do I optimize for travel duration? How do I take preferences of user, how they are traveling with family, etc. So you can keep extending so much, and you can build your own, application to the end. But this is one interesting project that we actually saw. So what does it take for us to take this project, put it in your local laptop, and run it? Okay, so that's what we are going to see. Any questions before we get started? Okay, I guess not. Now, so I'm going to use a lot of commands and other things. Don't worry about it. So what I have done is, in our applied a club, added a new place called resources. Okay, so I've added, like, as in whatever I'm going to use, I'm just keeping adding, like, how do you work with each other with instructions, etc. So these ideally should help. It obviously doesn't have the context of what we are trying to do, but it's like a simple snippet that you can actually use for help whenever you actually need. So I'll also keep updating it when we find things which are actually lacking in this space. Now, okay, now let's get started. So now, I'm sure most of you know what GitHub is. So GitHub is basically a place where you can actually host your code. It can be private or public. Public, mostly they'll have some kind of licenses. Please check those licenses and see whether you can use it. And can you actually build a platform out of it? Can you sell it to other users? Can you make money? So a lot of those licenses there, just make sure you actually check those. But let's just get started. to see how we can actually host this in our local laptop. Now, first thing is install Cursor. So we use Cursor. You can use VS Code. You can use like there are other platforms that are out there. I'm sure all of them are the same. So what we actually used to is like Cursor. Just install it. There is a free version. I have a paid version over here. The only difference is that the number of LLM calls that you have. For the longest time, I've used free version. It actually works perfectly fine. It just that when I saw the usage has gotten like much higher, then I decided to pay for this. But it is not needed for anybody actually to get started. Okay.
In the free version, it has only 50 Claude requests, right?
Oh, they changed it, is it? They
Yeah.
probably changed it.
Because
Yeah.
I couldn't, it blocked my this thing, so I had to upgrade immediately. And there was an option to also put OpenAI key. I have an OpenAI subscription, but it was not allowing me to do that either.
Yeah. So this I remember because when I started, either use the free version or you can also bring in the LLM's keys, and it used to work.
Right.
But I think they changed something recently. So I subscribed like 2 months back to Pro.
Okay.
But it makes sense, like
Right.
the amount of work we actually do. So yeah. But yeah, like this is not the only tool. Like even GitHub Copilot is free now. I'm sure a lot of those things are actually getting better. But Cursor is definitely pretty good. I've not even tried all the bolt menu and the other things because I tried once. I realized that it is either the same, but it's almost the same. So decided not to do it. Okay. Now, one of the first thing that we need to do is essentially what we are going to do is we are going to copy this whole thing into our local system, and we need to run. Okay. So the easiest way, so the one way you can actually copy this is just go download and do it. But this is something I've not seen it work so well. So the easiest way they actually do is just copy this URL and like clone it. Okay. This is also something I actually recommend because the advantage of Git, like for example, this is a project for our this landing page. Okay. Now, one of the advantages, if I change anything, I can just like check in and push the updates over here. So the reason why updating your Git is important and not just keeping on your local, especially for a person like me, is because sometimes LLM gets into a stage where you get frustrated and you know that it is not working. So you want to revert everything to the previous state and start from scratch. A lot of times that actually works, right? So with Git, what happens is even if I make like hundreds of changes, I can always go back and simply say like, hey, revert everything. I want to start from scratch. So that actually works for me because I keep do these check-ins, and if there is a massive mistake where the correction is very hard, I am not a person who can go and look at each piece of code and see what has changed and what has fixed. That's something I don't want to do. So I simply use Git. So it's a very nice way for you to check in and make sure everything actually works. There are other advantages, but this is the primary reason why I actually use Git. Not just keep everything in my local system. Okay. Now, for you to get started, there are few setup things that you need to do. First, go to your GitHub, create an account. It will ask you to add some two-factor authentication keys, etc. Once you do that, there is a part. So the account is created. Now, one of the things I do here is I just simply click commit. It will push the code to this GitHub site. Now, the way it actually works is because it knows that it is my laptop and it knows that I'm the user who's actually trying to do. Okay. So for the first time, you will need to do some setup process, which is taking your computer's SSH key, which is your authentication key, and adding it to the GitHub repo system. So I have given instructions on how to do that. So this will be your GitHub email. Run this command, like just copy it to clipboard. Go to the GitHub settings, and you have SSH and CPG keys. So go to this, keys, and you can add that key. Okay, I don't know why mine says I probably have a different way of setting it up, but I have set this up like probably years before, so I don't have it, but this definitely works. Yeah. Now Once you do that, you simply say GitHub, I think version, right? No. Let's see. Git info, I think. Something like that. Sorry, I forgot. There was a command added here.
Project manager.
Yeah, this one. So I do this, it'll tell me which GitHub account you have logged into. So once this is done, then it means you are actually set up. So this is slightly going to take an hour, especially the first time it took me a lot of time. Hopefully this guide helps you, but there are enough resources available. Just make sure you actually set it up. Okay. Now, once you set it up, what we will do is just go copy this link, go to, what's this? Window, terminal. So what I have is all the projects that I have. I put it in a common location. Give me 1 second. It's not working. Got it. So I do it in a common location called playground, so that I know all the projects that are actually there. You decide whatever you actually want to do. So I can simply say git clone this. Okay. There are two ways to do it. One is you directly clone somebody else's repository, or if you want to make a copy of it in your repository, you can just click on this fork. So when you fork it, when you create fork, it will come into like your repository. So you will have your own version of that thing at that point in time. Okay. Now you can do this also. Just go here. Sorry. Copy this link. And just say git clone. Awesome. Yeah, depending on the size of the project, it takes a bit of time. Okay. Now just open that project. Go to that location. Awesome LLM apps. You open, it will simply open. But our project, the project that we are interested is in agent tutorials called travel agent. So I'm just going to open this. Okay. So yeah, like this entire project, whatever we saw over there, so that is actually added available over here. Okay. So that is step number 1. That means the first whatever thing that we wanted to do, we are actually done. Now the simplest thing you can do is just go here, go to the agent tutorials, the travel agents, and most of these guys have a good readme. Just read the readme on what you're supposed to do. So we already did the cloning, and he said like go to this location and pip install requirements. Now we'll talk about this. Now what happens is every like it doesn't matter which are the languages, all the your JavaScript languages or your Python languages, all of them use these packages. Okay. So like package, for example, this is using, I'm sure it is using some form of like LLMs. It will also use either something called like fast API, or this also uses something called Streamlit, which is for like a web. It uses a lot of these platforms. Okay. So all those, what all packages you want for this particular agent, it is usually present in a requirements.txt. Right. So most of these projects have. So that is what they're saying, that to install these packages, there's a command you actually run. Now, important thing is, especially when you are working with Python, when you run this command, guys, can you still hear me?
Yes, Bala.
Yeah. So when you run this command, so what it does is it installs all these packages across your systems.
The screen is not shared.
So screen is not shared. Shit, sorry. Yeah, just let me know next time if this happens. There is also some interior work going on, so I'm hope it's not too bad. Okay, so it all goes into a something called a requirements.txt. So this is where you put in all the modules that need to come in, right? Now if I simply go to again go to new terminal. Now if I run this pip install -r requirements.txt, what happens is it will install this requirement across the system. That means if we have two projects, one project needs one version of, let's say, Streamlit, and other projects needs other version of Streamlit. This happens a lot, and it is a nightmare when it actually happens, because the project will suddenly stop working. You'll not know why. Then if you go to Google, it will say install latest, install this particular version, all of that shit. It's a big nightmare. So one way is isolate the dependencies for each of these projects individually. Okay, so common way to do this in Python is there are two things. One is called and here, oops, yeah. So one is called pip and the other one is called poetry. Okay, so don't worry about this. All of these things you'll learn later once you start using it. Right now, keep it very, very simple. Pip is extremely simple for you to use. Okay, so when we do this, so we create a virtual environment to manage this whole thing. Okay, the virtual environment is, it's like if you have heard of what do you call these virtual machines, where it's like a computer in itself. So you're creating a separate environment where all the package and everything resides only for that particular project. So the way we do that is, so there is a Python -m venv my env is the name of the env. Okay, I typically what I do is I just do dot, because I know that it has like a lot of these packages and other things. So I'll say travel agent env. Okay, so once I create this env, you will see that there is a folder that actually gets created. So it says that I've seen there is a new environment. Do you want to select this environment? I say yes. Okay. Come on. Okay, this is done. So once it is done, so the environment is created, but we need to tell the system that I want to use this environment when I run the next set of commands. So the way to do that is this. Okay, so I simply say source, right? Source travel agent. So this is present, so you don't have to. You will see that this environment is active over here. Okay, now whatever packages I install, it will be local to this environment. It will not go anywhere. So now I can go back and run that command. Install requirements.txt. Yeah, depending on how much ever you have, it will take a lot of time. Any questions on this so far? I know it's a lot of commands, but unfortunately, this is the way to get started.
So every time we work on this repository, we'll have to activate this environment, use that, and
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, cursor kind of remembers when you open this particular project because it will see that there is an env. But you always have to check before you run any commands because it will simply say that, oh, I can't find OpenAI, even though you have installed. So you need to make sure that you are in that environment. Okay. And there are two things. This is something I learned the hard way. So one is environment in the terminal and environment for this kind of like code base. Okay, it's called like this is called an interpreter. I have added the I've added the this thing comments over here. But what happens is if you go to the travel agent file, it will simply say like, oh, this is not available. While you have actually installed, it will say it is not available. Most likely, this environment doesn't have the corresponding thing selected. Like it will show like this here. So there is a you can use this command, press Control Shift, sorry, Command Shift P, say select interpreter, and you can select the you'll see all the environments that are available over here. So this is what we are using. So you just choose this, and it will go.
So can you show again how you choose the interpreter? Sorry.
So the command is Control Shift P or Command Shift P in Mac. So Command Shift P, it will come. Just say select interpreter, and you will see the name that you have given, whatever. So these are the different environments I have. Different Python versions, different environment, all of those things. LangGraph env is there, Llama index. So all of these things are coming slowly. So this is the one we are using here. So I'm just going to select it. Sometimes it like okay, like this is something I've never figured out. Sometimes it just doesn't appear. So what I do is I close until I quit cursor, I reopen it, etc., and it comes back. So I've not gotten to that level, but unless you do that, it will not work. All right. Okay. So before I mean, while this actually happens, let's also see what he has actually done for travel agent, right? So what he's doing is, so they are using something called Streamlit. So Streamlit is a very easy way to build a UI for a Python program. Okay, so something I've used during our like for data analytics and other things. So without building like a separate front end, what it does is it gives you like an interface where you can set like commands like this, title, caption, etc., and it will help you build this UI very easily. Okay. Yeah, just check it out. These are mainly for like data applications. A lot of people actually use it. It's quite big actually, the system. Yeah, so this is what this guy is using. He's setting the like the name, caption, then he's getting the OpenAI keys, all of these keys, and see he is simply calling the prompt. Okay, this is just the prompt. So now you can play around the prompt and it will kind of give you different outputs. It's a very simple case. Okay, why is it not coming? I think my laptop is also dying. I will close a few things.
Bala, I have a question. So when, like for example, if I know what tech stack for front end I'll be using, what setup for back end I'll be using. All for example, if I'm using shared CN and some React component, something that I want to use across applications, do I still have to create an environment and install dependencies of project individually for every project, or can there be a common system level environment which can be shared between multiple projects? Because every time we do it, is it cloning the entire repositories into my project folder? Like, does it take a lot of load? Like, does it download all of them locally?
Yeah, see the thing is, like, even if you are using, let's say, ShadCN or Next.js, right? So we're talking about a separate front end project or a back end project, whatever. So let's take just this project. So this project is a Python project. It has a bunch of requirements. Now, let's say you have a similar project which has, let's say, 2, 3 more. Obviously, you can share the packages across all of these. You can create the environment, etc., and share the packages, etc. Okay. But if there is a small version mismatch,
Okay.
everything will go for a toss.
Okay.
Okay. So those are some of the problems. So it is recommended that you create a separate environment for each of the projects.
Okay.
So
Also,
in
Karthik,
go on.
yeah. For example, for different projects, you install a different set of libraries, right? For example, in this case, you have Google Search Results. It is possible that some of the libraries would want a different version of the same library across in different projects. If you install one across the system, it may not be compatible with another internal library different for another project. So
Got
that's also something that we have run into. But something as simple as somebody will say, I need a 3.9 version of Python. Maybe another project says minimum is 3.11. So which is why it becomes difficult to do it across the system.
Got it.
Yeah, those things are a nightmare. Like the moment you have a version mismatch, etc., like the debugging process itself takes a lot of time. So just keep it separate better. Okay, so now the installation is done. We are kind of set. So the time to run this. So they have asked us to get the OpenAI key, and there is another SERP API key. So SERP API is basically the Google searches account, right? So I have created both of these. Yeah, I have created both of these. So I'm just gonna simply, oh God, I'm gonna simply run. Wait, where is it? Where is the project? Sorry. I'm just gonna string it. Ta-da! Okay, there is no module named Agno. I thought we installed it. These are the problems that will happen. Okay, so I'll say pip install. No, it's already satisfied. Lovely. Okay, here done.
So here it is suggesting to upgrade. So do you upgrade whenever it says so, or you don't do that? I did this once and it I think created problems, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so that happens sometimes. So we sometimes upgrade, like a lot of times I ignore it.
Okay.
So this happens sometimes, man. Like it's really impossible to figure out what is happening. Even if Google, etc., it will simply say, "Oh, you've not installed it properly. Just try to reinstall it, etc." Let's see. Go to Travel Agent, go to Libraries, and you have Agno. That means Agno is installed in your environment. Now, if it is saying this, then it means something is not correctly loading. Okay. So let's do one thing. Let's just quit it once, reopen, and see if it helps.
So generally, I mean, I can just quickly take a 1 minute. So generally, what happens is actually like there will be new versions launched of Agna, and it will eventually pull that the latest one.
Yeah.
It might not be compatible with the code that you're using. That's one possibility. So simply one thing we can do is one is actually inside the requirement we can add a version against each of them, which will mean it will
Yeah.
it won't update the latest one.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll just open it. So in the requirements, you can also say equal to, right? I don't remember the syntax. So you would provide a version number like this. So you can get that version number also. Okay.
What happens if the version that you are referencing to doesn't exist, or they stop supporting it, or
It will give you, yeah, it'll give you an error.
then is it better to clone that entire code base into your system rather than depending on an online path?
No, it doesn't matter. So the code base will only see the packages are like package and put it in like some like package manager. Like tip is a package manager. Okay.
Okay.
When you download the code, you're only downloading the code that you have written, referencing those packages.
Okay.
Like you won't be able to kind of, I mean, you have to take the source code of each of those packages and put it over here, which is impossible, almost impossible. Okay. So you will have to use external packages a lot of times, except for I think like there are some open source packages that I have used, especially for the image project, where the open source package was not good enough. Like they were not having few features. So what I did is I entered, downloaded the code base, and I made all the modifications myself and started using it. Okay.
Okay.
So for those exception cases, you will end up using all these packages. See, yeah, sometimes this happens. So what they're asking us to is copy the OpenAI key. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing, copy paste my keys. Give me a second. I'll tell you once it is done. Okay, done. Sharing it again. All right. Yeah, so paste those keys. Now he says where do you want to go. So it's a New York. How many days? Let's say 10 days. So click on generate itinerary. Yep. So it gives you a draft itinerary, 10 days arrival, Midtown, Uptown, arts and culture, downtown avenue. Yeah. So it basically did a Google research and gave you this. So now it's in a proper like up and running stage. Okay. Now let's any questions on this so far? Okay. So if there are not, like, let's take 5 more minutes and we'll talk about how do we make minor modifications, right? So it doesn't really start with it doesn't really stop with just running it, but let's say what do you want to make these minor modifications when we really don't understand what is happening. So see, basically you guys understand what is happening. So that means you're collecting the keys, then you're calling the agents by passing in the keys. Like these are the prompts. Now we can go ahead and change those prompts. You can do all of these things, but let's make some coding changes. For example, let's say instead of collecting these API keys one by one every time, can I simply like access the API keys from a common place and don't have to enter it every time? So small changes. Now there are two parts. One is how do I store my keys in a secure way? That means I can't just push it to GitHub or somebody accessing my tool can find out easily. That is a very risky thing, right? So anytime you work with keys, there is a way for you to manage environmental variables. So wherever you host your system, so you will create something called an environmental variable, and when the program runs, it'll just reference it dynamically. Okay, and this is something you ensure that it doesn't go into GitHub, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't get leaked, etc. So that's a good practice. So front end like Next.js, etc. I've seen it provided by default, but for Python, I have not seen it provided by default. So what I'll do is you create something called a .env. This is my way of doing things. Create .env, and here we say open AI API key and SERP API key. Okay, so these are the two fields that we actually need over here. Okay, so I'm going to create this, and I'm going to change this to the correct values. And in the file, instead of managing getting from the user, I need to say that, hey, take it from the env variable. Okay, so this is something that we are going to do, which is just copy it, do a command L, or you can do this. Okay, not this one. So go here to composer and say that. So there are, I mean, we'll talk about how to command cursor or like this cursor to work properly based on the project, etc. We'll have a separate session on that. It's a very exhaustive topic. Since it's a very simple project, I'll talk about something like I'll just keep it very straightforward. Okay. So usually what you do is you select the code, copy paste it. In this case, it will reference it, know where the code actually is. It says, hey, instead of getting the inputs, the key inputs from the user, I want you to read this the env variables. The env is present in most, like always try to tag the files instead of just typing it out so that it knows where it is from. These are already, and ask questions if any. So this is something I use for like complex queries, but you can use it for simple queries also. Do you want to keep the text input fields as fallback? No, just throw an error. Center. Okay, now let's see. So once it changes, just don't accept it. That's the big problem because it will remove a lot of fun. See, it removed the whole thing. What the hell is it doing? Okay, so it reads from this keys, which is fine. It removed the inputs. This is fine. Why did it remove the whole instructions part and planner agent? What? See, it removed all of this thing, the important code. This is the problem. So we need to be very careful. We gave a very simple instruction, but it's still like fucked up. So simply say, okay.
Can't we partially accept here? Is it accept all or reject all?
We can. But what I generally, because there will be dependencies now.
Okay.
So what I generally do is I reject, like most, if I'm not very sure, I just reject the whole thing and I simply say, like redo a lot of stuff, like scratch.
I think what helped here for me is we should ask it to first think and plan. Do not change the code, and then ask it to execute. Is what I say. That
Correct.
is something worked for me.
That's what I usually do, but since it's a very simple project, I thought it well.
Yeah.
So in some of these cases, when you're rejecting the whole thing, rather than replying to it, it makes sense to go back and correct it in the original prompt. So that way, it will not have a lot of these hallucinations in context. That's also something you can do. First, we change that part. Don't change sections. Rerun and map the changes first. Once I approve, right? Okay, current flow. User enters OpenAI key, SERP API key is initial research and plan agents, propose changes, remove the text inputs, load the keys from env, initialize agents, reasoning, more secure, better user experience, follow best practices. Existing switch Python to env. Yeah. Sounds good. Yep. Hit. Yep. See, now it has changed only that part, which is perfect. It's accept. Sorry, what is the other thing? For requirements, huh? Got it. This is accept. Okay. Done. So let me restart this. Where do you want to go? So say delete. It won't work because the keys are all wrong. But at least you're able to remove this. So let me just add the keys and I'll come back. All right. Let's go now. All right. So yeah, go on. Was there a question?
Yeah, even before you updated the keys, it did update. It did
Yeah, I
show.
don't know. I
Looks
also
like
don't know where. Like probably it's taking either the key. It read the previous key, whether it was an actual key. It got trained with. I think that's the only way. This makes sense because but the results were different. It simply talked about what
yeah,
Delhi is. Probably it didn't have a key. It just did. I don't know how it actually worked. I was thinking the same. Okay. All right. So let's. So now this project, just close it. Let's say we want to get it to check it back into our GitHub. So now the project is set up. We've made our changes. Let's say we want to check into our what do you call repository. So we have our own repository. Okay, did we clone? Yeah, I think we cloned it. Or some other maps. Okay. Okay, it's done. So this now let's say I want to check in. So now go to here. It does all of those things. So before we do the check-in, it is important to check which, like whether we are committing to our Git repository because it's already done for him, whether it's trying to commit to his. So there is a command for that again. And actually, yeah, projects. So it's called Git remote and we. So yeah, it is mine only because we just installed from mine, so which is fine. Then we can say, oh, see, it is updating all the things that we are supposed to do. So one important thing here is, see, all the packages we installed, these packages are like public packages. It just fetches to install it over here. So we don't have to check into GitHub. It's unnecessary waste of space. Okay. Second thing is we should not be checking in our env variables because it is sensitive. Like we can't put it in GitHub. It has to be in wherever environment we actually work with. So for that we create something called a .gitignore file. So this file will ensure that we can say what files you don't want to check in. So if I say this, agent query. So these files will not get checked in automatically. So now if I go to GitHub, why are these things still there? They're supposed to be removed. Yeah. Oh, I don't understand why. Does any of you know why?
You can just try committing git now, just that file, and maybe try once.
Sorry, what should I try?
Just add
Commit
git
it,
now,
is it?
commit
Let me try.
only git now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Done. Sure. So yeah, for you to commit, just go to your. I forgot where are the comments for that. I typically do this. Just go here. Say what is the change you have made. So remove manual entry of keys and hash them from env first setup sick project. Sure. Commit. Okay. Say, oh, I'll just say checking through. Commit. Sync changes. That's it. So all your changes now are checked into GitHub actually. So if I refresh, so check into is the latest check-in that was done just now. Okay, cool. Any questions on this so far? First of all, is it useful?
Very
Yeah,
much.
For
Yeah.
me, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Right. Any questions?
So once you've made the update, Git also does version control. Right? Can I also go back and look at the older version, or maybe
Yeah.
fork it, clone it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that is very useful also. I'll just go back. So you go to your previous commits. It will show all the commits. Then you can say browse code at this point. Okay. So it will show the code as of like that particular check-in. So you can browse the whole thing. You can even go to individual files. Let's say open web scraper. You can see the history. So it looks like only one change was made, but you can see the history of all the changes that are done, and like you can see the repository at this point. So you can do all sorts of things. So this is a big advantage for you. There are also ways for you to, if you say you wrongly entered some things, you want to go back to the original version. There are also ways for you to remove that new versions and go back to a previous version. So all those things are possible with Git.
Okay, got it. Another question was clone versus fork. What do you recommend typically?
See, fork basically adds it to your own repository, so you can do whatever you want. Clone is without moving into your repo if you want to check out how things are actually. So that's another way. I've not seen big differences apart from like these operational differences. One thing that I've noticed is the remote repository the code is connected to depends on where you clone it from. Either you clone it from after forking, you clone it from yours. That means it's always connected to yours. Before forking, if you clone, then it will be connected to him. So you have to do some changes after that.
Got it.
This is the only relevant thing I have faced, but like engineers probably can comment if there are other things. Okay. All right, guys. Anything else?
This had a front end in place. I mean, if there is no front end in place, do you have any good ways to manage things? I mean, I okay.
Postman is amazing. That's like kind of like the best way that you can actually work with. All the backend, I always use Postman. So what I have is, if you see my things, so
But I think you should also give the brief of what to expect in the next couple of weeks so that they know, what all they will be learning, right? Because this is also a part of it.
oh yeah, correct, exactly. So yeah, quickly I'll touch. So Tarun, like if you see, I have created a separate version with local, and I have created a separate version with like production. So I do these things so that I can play around with things whenever I need. Yeah. So we'll talk more about this. So probably, like good time. So Praveen and I discussed like what would be a right way for us to proceed going forward, right? Now we've created a series of about like 9 lessons, starting from, so this is the like probably step 0. How do you set up the environment, etc. We will talk about how do you work with backend. Like we typically work with Python. So what frameworks to use? How do you test it? How do you set it up? What does the structure look like? How do you make changes? So all of those things. Then there is also working with authentication. Like how do you ensure even the APIs or whatever you're using is secure? What programs you can use? Connecting with databases, what structure like, etc. So we typically use Supabase. Supabase, at least so far, has been quite useful for us. And we're still looking in a free version. I don't know how. For all the usage that we actually do is still in free. And then comes to like front end. So front end will actually have a separate session, and there is also monitoring, logging, things around that. Praveen, anything else?
That's it. We will try to build a very simple application, both back and front end APIs, managing APIs, databases, everything. I think that's what we will do in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think we can take up one project. We still haven't decided on an idea. We'll take a very
Yeah.
simple project. We'll do all of those things kind of full. So end of the period, we should have like the entire app ready. So that's kind of the whole idea.
Bala, maybe one. Okay. So maybe like a very short session on hosting might also be useful.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, hosting is again part of the project. We'll talk about all the different things we have tried, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll publish that schedule maybe by the end of this.
Yeah.
What to expect.
One more suggestion is, when you're doing logging, tracing, and all, something around evaluation. Like let's say if I want to switch model or something at a later point,
Yes.
how do I
Working
use?
with LLMs is very interesting. Probably we'll have a separate session on working with different LLMs. How do you test it? How do you switch it easily? Yeah, that's a very good idea. We'll add that.
And also, Bala, the last session you showed something on LangGraph, right, for managing agents and all. So I had a confusion as to how to manage if you have multiple agents and you're managing your code base on Cursor. How can we connect both of them, manage the agents there, put it here? How does that entire workflow happen? That was
We can do one LangGraph session. So what we can do is, in terms of AI, we will first do I think whatever we are doing is focus more on development. But like we'll do one session on how do you work with different LLMs, switching LLMs, configurations, best practices, testing, etc., evals, etc. Then we'll also get to a framework which is LangGraph is the one we have used extensively, so we can talk about that. All the things that we can actually work with that we can try.
sure.
Yeah, that's something we can do. Super. Anything else, folks? Cool. Just try to do this. I'll send you the package, the name of the repo that we used. So play around with it. If you have any questions, do refer to the guides. If you want me to add a few more things over there, just let me know. I'll add that. Okay. Super. Awesome. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.